Why have you called me back?
First of all, radio blackout, and then that extraordinary sound.
Same pattern?
Exactly the same.
What is it?
A lament for the dead.
Were you suggesting that we're dealing with...
Pull to open.
Pull to open?
Yes, and what do you do?
Nothing as yet.
What are you trying to say?
I hope you've got a very good reason.
What is that thing you're fiddling with?
The big event is yet to come.
Here come the drums!
Hello, and welcome to Pull to Open. Okay, the newest Doctor Who, the television programme, in totally tartan order. My name is Chris of the Clan Taylor.
Oh, hey, and I'm Pete Paschal. I know this guy. Yeah,
Hey.
It's not like I don't. And we're in the midst of some summer fun here, clearly, guys. Fun with accents. And nothing like, doing some fun things with your voice while you're out on the lake with your floaty, you're kicking your feet up, you're listening to your favorite podcast on a waterproof speaker, of course. Don't fear any sea monsters or anything ruining your fun. Just be cool. We're just going to be cool here on Pull to
That's
Open.
right. Do not fear the Nessie. There is we got a history corner coming up on Nessie, and but yes, sorry, Scotland. I figured everything was cool now that Scotland and England voted the same way in the general election that we just had here. I should say before we go much further, I am here in the UK once again. At
Right.
an appropriate time in the show's choices of episodes to take us to. But what choices, you say? Well, let me take you back, way back, 3 stories ago. Back before I adopted this accent, and before we got into our hot takes on the new season, we were not in Scotland, we were in Wales. We went to Wales for Delta and the Bannermen, we did. And that we had a lovely time at a holiday camp in Wales. And then the randomizer decided after that 2 stories ago that we were to have no more fun in holiday camps. We were instead to have camp fun in a nuclear bunker on 2 or 3 planets. Count them. And it wanted us to see its own birth in the Armageddon Factor, that Tom Baker joint.
I like how your Atrios accent is just you. It's not even Marshall.
I could put on a Brixton accent. I mean, I do have to say,
There you go.
we're recording this shortly after the Armageddon Factor came out on Spotify. For you, it's 2 episodes ago. For us, we just heard it. And we were talking about Drax being from Brixton. I was literally on the train from Brixton as I started listening to
Whoa.
that. How about that for random, my
Well,
friends?
that was the randomizer connection right there.
That was the
That's why
randomizer. It knew. The randomizer
It's
can
projecting
see.
forward.
It can see into the future, and the next thing it saw after the Armageddon Factor, after its own birth, was the birth of the adipose. The randomizer wanted us to dissolve in a pool of fat, and for little creatures to climb out of us in partners in crime. And
It's funny that this is the first podcast we're recording post having seen the entire season, and that just Partners in Crime, that was some time ago for us, even though it's kind of just recently for you guys.
yeah,
Yeah.
it was a while back, and
We trimmed the fat between here and there, you might say.
we really did. I mean, the randomizer's been thinking about companions. I think that is becoming clear. It was thinking about the almost companion of Delta and the Bannermen, the changing companion of Romana in the Armageddon Factor. She literally was about to change her face into another person in that show.
Right.
And then we had Partners in Crime, where someone who wasn't originally supposed to be a companion became a companion with the perma-arrival of Ms. Donna Noble. And then the randomizer said, take me to the lake, take me to the loch, take me to Nessie. It said, so we went up from London from Adipose Industries. We got on that intercity. We went all the way to Loch Ness for season 13, serial 1. That's right, we're back in the Tom Baker era with Terror of the Zygons. And
betcha.
and that's our Zygon bingo, as we mentioned at the end of Partners in Crime. We're done. We've done Invasion Inversion. We've done Day of the Doctor. And this is it, the original and perhaps the best. We'll find out.
Tic-tac-toe with the Zygons. We're 3 in a row here. Well, not in a row.
You can
3.
actually play tic-tac-toe on a Zygon. That's kind of one advantage of the suckers there. They form natural lows.
A Connect 17 would be playing.
It depends what the size of the head. Yeah. Poison sacs in the tongue. Yeah.
Well, we're going to get to the Zygons and all the terror they inspire in a little bit, folks. But I hear something happening, and I think it might be the Whomoji Challenge. That's right. We're cutting right to it today. This is the part of the show that Chris is super grateful we're getting out of the way today super quickly. It's where I get to torture him by describing emojis that correspond to a title of a Doctor Who story, and he must guess the title from those emojis in a Scottish accent. All of that has to happen very soon.
Does it, though?
These are all... Yeah, they do.
Does it? To quote the great Jamie McCrinnan, I'll no go with you, Phantom Piper. I'll no go with you. But okay, I suppose I have to.
Yeah, you're going with me because the fans have gone with me. And I just want to shout out to all the fans who have submitted numerous emojis over the last several weeks. Thank you very much. We're going to get through all of these eventually. We might have a full emoji special episode, I don't know, just to make sure we do. But until then, we're going to do them one by one. And this is another one of the several that one of our reviewers goes by the handle CT Tig has given us. That's right. Via a review on the Apple Podcasts app. And then this particular story, this particular Whomoji, has 4 emojis. So are you ready, sir?
As long as one of them is a Scottish flag, I'd be quite happy with this challenge.
No Scottish flags, but I'm going to go right into it. Here is the first emoji. It is a speaking head.
Okay.
Second emoji. It is a musical note. The 2 notes. What do you call that?
Called
like a TT back in.
I know what you mean. It's not like a chord. It's like it's not a quaver. Is it a quaver? Crotchet? I don't know. Something.
I could probably use Google on this, but I'm too lazy. Then the third emoji is a warning triangle, like the yellow triangle with an exclamation point in it.
Oh, I think I see where we're going here, but carry on.
And then we have the final one, which is kind of it's the bright sun. It's more of a ring, though. It's kind of like that's not filled in. It's like a glowing button.
Okay.
I think it's called the bright button.
The bright.
So I'm going to put this in the chat. That one might not be a little clear, but I'm putting it in the chat so you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay.
What might it be, Chris?
It might be the Devil's Cord.
It's not the Devil's Cord.
Oh, man. I thought we were going to have our first shoot emoji. But no. I wonder then, is it Rings of Arcton?
It's Rings of Arcton! Yes! Boom! Nailed it! Wow! I would not have gotten this one, I'll be honest with you. I'm really impressed you got it on the second guess. What gave it away for you? The ring at the end? Or?
The ring, and then I was reminded recently that there is a song in that, right?
Yeah.
There's music in
Big
that.
time. Yep.
Yeah.
That's like part of the whole resolution where they're all like holding hands and singing things, and it's actually like on the soundtrack. It's a pretty good little Murray-Gold. I think it was Murray-Gold number.
Makes sense. Yeah, absolutely. He was season 7. So yeah, okay, phew.
Nice.
That's a relief for me and for the listeners.
Reminder, you listeners can also continue to contribute these by submitting reviews for the show. Yeah, you can put your emoji in the title of your review, in the body of your review. wherever you like it, wherever we get reviews. Apple is the best place for that, but wherever you are able to do so, we'll see it. And then we will have it in a future Whomoji challenge.
Yes, and what we'll also have in the future is more polls, because you can vote. You can vote in the referendum for independence from bull to open. Sorry again, Scotland. We're all good friends here. I should say I'm on the English side of the Scottish border, and we do like to, tease them gently, as they know.
By this point, the people who would be driven away by it have been completely driven away. So
That's
think
true.
we can fully embrace.
Whereas all the Mrs. Doubtfire fans are still with us. Because they think that's what a Scottish accent is. But yes, you can vote. You don't have to take the word of we Sassenachs on what we think of the story. You can vote right now. If you pull from the bottom of the screen, that's right, it's pull the poll to open. And vote right now, if you like, on Terror of the Zygons. But these are on the bottom of every story, and they remain open. So just go through every single tale that we've done on Spotify with a poll to open on it, and go vote. Vote early and often. And we're going to read some ratings now from Delta and the Bannermen.
Right.
Which, just to remind you, we had a surprising amount of fun with. Even though it's known, not well known or not well loved in the Doctor Who canon, in the polls.
It has a bit of a reputation.
Yeah.
Like a lot of these stories of that era.
But
the McCoy era.
we both rated it a Dalek as in a so bad it's good Dalek. And so, we had a lot of fun with it. And it seems that the listeners of Pull to Open agreed with us. And with a 50% landslide victory, which is much more than Labour just got in the British election, it's the Dalek. And in equal second place...
And yes.
In equal second place, forming the opposition parties.
No, continue.
The opposition parties are Professor Hater and the Ogron, whereas losing his deposit is Mr. Banger, aka the Viscount. But no fixed point in time, no Lady Cassandra's. But yes, that's it. People have spoken. It's a Dalek. They agree with us. They have not declared independence.
Maybe we haven't done enough Cassandras lately, because I feel like this one could have qualified as a Cassandra, but it didn't look that great. It was just kind of like more the feeling you got.
Yeah. I think it's really that salmon on top of that hunk of pork that the villain was eating, and that really just puts you off your Lady Cassandra rating. So I can hear that.
It seems like we're well aligned with the audience there. Both of us gave it a Dalek. The audience gave it a Dalek. It's an official Dalek, even though it's kind of a so bad it's good Dalek. Now, we did talk about potentially introducing a new rating, seventh rating to our rating system that could be so bad it's good.
Yes.
We've got a few submissions from fans on that. We've been mulling them over. We're going to talk about that, not today, but in a future...
I'm unaware of these submissions. I would like to know what people have been suggesting. And I would like to throw my own hat in the ring that because I've been thinking about it as a Meglos Dalek, because we had so much fun with Meglos, that we just simply call it the Meglos.
The Meglos. I like it. Not bad. We're going to have a quick confab, I think, in our next random episode. Look forward to that.
Yeah.
I want to give the submissions a fair hearing and have at it. So if you're listening to this and wondering about, hey, when is that coming? It's coming soon. But I would also say by the time you do listen to this, we'll have already decided, even though you don't know it yet. So I don't know if you'll be able to really keep submitting ideas. So I'll watch for that in our next episode.
Listening to Pull to Open sometimes can be a bit like Unit being in 1980 when it's 1975. Or vice versa. So yes, but speaking of, if you are in 1975, then you don't have YouTube. But if you're in the 21st century, then you do have YouTube, and you can go and support the show there, like and subscribe, become a true companion, or a Viscount, a laird of the manor, if you will, or a super thanks which
That's
is
the one time.
awesome. That's
The one-time thing.
one time. And the 2 times is the super thanks. No, I don't know what that is. You can also follow us on
It's all the ways to support the show.
Yes.
You can support us on Patreon, patreon.com/pull-to-open, or even directly through Spotify. Yes, you can pledge amounts even on the Spotify platform. There's a button. Go ahead and follow it and pledge whatever your heart desires. All great ways to support the show and ensure we keep bringing you random adventures throughout time and space with loads of commentary and fun times.
Yes, and Pete, another great way to support the show is to cut right to the chase and get to our review of Terror of the Zygons, which it means it is time for your terror to begin.
Wait, what?
Right?
Hold on. What are we talking about? Hold on. I'm doing TLDW?
Yes.
Oh my God. We're spacing these out so far now. Like,
yes.
I don't even know who's doing what. Okay, well, this is just
if you remember,
on me.
if you listened to Armageddon Factor yesterday in our timeline, you would have heard yourself doing the TLDW.
I did, but that was... Oh, right, we did Partners in Crime. We just talked about that.
Yes. Pete has been taken over by a Zygon, everyone. I think that this is the indication, because the real Pete would have remembered. So, Zygon Pete, I would like you to go and wake up your human that you're imprinting from and get him down here to do the TLDW.
If that gives me a couple minutes to study, I might actually do that.
Yeah, you got time to go out the room, come back in, take off your Zygon costume, and you have no time at all. I'm sorry about that, because TLDW is how we start every story, every Pull to Open episode, every summary of the story that we're talking about, where we summarize the tale in record time, which we allot 30 seconds per Classic Who episode, which means that the Terror of the Zygons, a 4-parter, you have a luxurious, you resisted this definition for Armageddon Factor, but I'm going to say it again, luxurious 4 minutes. In 4 minutes? No, 2 minutes. 2 minutes.
I'll take it. You said it. No backsies.
Yes, but we're being Scottish today, so yes, you'll have had your second 2 minutes then, and you've just got 2 minutes, but you have another few seconds while I pull up the stopwatch.
Okay.
And are you ready?
My brain. No, but okay. You know what? I'll say this about the new Apple computers. They let me be ready instantly because they have this cool thing where if you click on the background, on your desktop background, all your windows scatter.
Oh yeah.
And so that's a good way of no notes.
Are we being sponsored by Apple? And you didn't let me know. Just checking here. Because, I could talk about the continuity camera and how awesome that is. But anyway, no distractions. It's time for Zygons. So let Zygons be Zygons. I had to say it first. And we start with the official Pull to Open summary of Terror of the Zygons in 2 minutes, starting in 3, 2, 1, go.
Right, lads, we're in Scotland, and it's the Doctor and Sarah and Harry, and they're there to meet the Brigadier, who's been called into Scotland near Loch Ness because there's been a lot of stuff happening in the North Sea nearby. That stuff's getting, oil rigs are getting smashed around. And so the Doctor's there to investigate. He finds a big tooth mark in sort of the ground or something. And so it's that's weird. And so he figures out that there's some massive creature. In the meantime, they're investigating what's happening, and there's this weird, creepy nurse. Harry gets hurt, he's trying to help someone, but they're shot by someone. And Harry gets hurt too, and the nurse turns out to be this Zygon. It's a alien creature that can change form, and it attacks Sarah. And they kidnap her and take her to the Zygon ship, and the Doctor has to go and rescue her, but he ends up getting it's not the ship. It's anyway, it gets sealed into this thing where the pressure goes down. It gets rescued by the Brigadier, and then they realize that there's this the sea creature is this essentially what the Loch Ness monster is, and the Doctor has this device that he's found that sort of controls it, and he nearly gets killed by it, but then it gets called away because Harry was actually the duplicated, and the original Harry screws up stuff at the Zygon control room, and the Zygons are also impersonating this Duke who's a member of the Energy Commission. And he realizes they realize what's happening is that they're going to destroy something in London, this energy conference with the Scaracen. That's the name of the Nessie creature, and they sort of rush to London to stop it. They blow up the Zygon ship, which was in Loch Ness. But the Brigadier does something for a change and blows it up, and then they go to save everyone from the Scaracen, and then Harry stays, and the Doctor and Sarah leave.
That's actually really good. You were drowning in Loch Ness at the end at about the 1 minute 30 mark, but you managed to surface just in time, because that's sort of how Terror of the Zygon ends. It's definitely one of those episodes, one of those stories that just kind of ends in kind of a hurry, and they really whip through the Nessie in London bit.
Do they ever? Oh my god!
Yes,
the old Zygon Gambit, as the Seventh Doctor would later call it.
Yes, the Zygon Gambit, which is not entirely clear. Let's start at that level there.
Well, here's the thing. Yeah, I whipped through the TLDW, and I will say I got through it. I think it would be fair to criticize I did not really connect many dots. Because you kind of, even though there's probably more connections than my summary gave it credit for, you kind of forget about them pretty quickly. Like who's duplicating who, like the oil rig stuff is kind of forgotten about halfway through. And then Broton, I didn't say his name, but Broton, the Zygon leader, his plan just is a little like abstract in a lot of ways, and you don't really have time to pull it apart, but you're like, wait a minute, they're conquering the world, terraforming the world, enslaving the world, all three? You don't really get a sense of what they're doing.
It's a little bit unclear. If Broton's evil plan were a school report, it would definitely be, I'd say, a C-, with some red pen from the teacher there going, needs work. And the first problem would be that they're blowing up oil rigs as a way to test the Scaracen. But they're also trying to melt the ice caps. So, as we now know from the comfort of the 21st century, the way to melt the ice caps is to let humans drill for oil and don't stop them drilling for oil. So that's one note I have to put in the margin of that plan right there, just as a sort of, let's stay positive, let's brainstorm this thing, Broton. If you really want to terraform the planet. And also there are Zygons on the way. I'm not sure if you mentioned that.
No, I didn't.
But also,
because it's a
that's kind of forgotten.
Moment.
Yeah. And the Doctor walks off without even resolving things. I mean, no wonder this is the Doctor who, literally in a few episodes, will just wander off with a Sutekh attached to his TARDIS. Because he's not really paying attention to the fact that there's an entire Zygon fleet on the way.
Right. And they do mention they'll take centuries to arrive.
Yeah.
Someone says that at some point, which is a little bit, how far away is this thing? Or like, how bad is Zygon technology when, we've seen in various episodes, stories, people whipping around the galaxy in hours, if not days. And are the Zygons like 10 galaxies away? Then why are they even here? I guess they said they've crashed and maybe with some expedition force.
Well, but, bless the Zygons, they're traveling actually at or just below the speed of light. They want to be a bit more realistic. So that's what they're doing. And it's kind of, I don't know if you've seen Three Body Problem or read the book, but that's kind of the plot.
No.
Is that humanity is waiting 400 years. But the difference being, people actually take the threat seriously, and they start to prepare the entire world for this invasion in 400 years' time. Whereas the Doctor is just like, no, I don't know, it's a social call. I'll come back when you're ready.
Yeah, are we meant to think, by the way, in Day of the Doctor, that those Zygons are that invasion force?
Do you know, that was
And
going to be one of my first questions for you.
yeah, well, I find like, not that they need to make these connections. I mean, those are all fine episodes with the future Zygon stuff, but it helps people like us
Yes.
kind of figure this stuff out, and maybe those are part of this team because
Yeah.
they don't come in centuries, but they are happening in what the Elizabethan era and the modern era, right? So, but I got the impression they didn't naturally land in 2013, right? They're originally like the Zygons are working in the past and come into the future via the paintings.
Right. So they might have fallen into a wormhole and ended up arriving in Elizabethan times. Possibly. But again, it's not really like invasion fleet sized, is it?
But they do say Broton's already been there for centuries. So theoretically, they could be part of that team, the same team. And they just sort of went out of the ship a little early to see if they can do some conquest. Back like, when was Queen Elizabeth? The 15, 1600s?
Yes, exactly. Late 1500s, early 1600s. So, yeah, that would make sense. In fact, I think it's 1580 or 1590 when the Doctor is there, ends up making out with a Zygon, poison sex in the time. But yeah, maybe we've yet to see the full invasion fleet, or maybe they arrived between Day of the Doctor and Zygon invasion and version, because there seem to be an awful lot more of them by the time we get to the Capaldi era. So
right,
yeah.
Well, and then like I want to stay on the Zygons just for a second. I want to talk more about just the overall story and everything else. But the retcon that they did later is that that the Zygon homeworld, which they talk about, was destroyed in this one. That like their homeworld was destroyed, and I think they give some pat reason. I forget exactly what it is, and that they I don't know. There was some environmental issue, I guess. But then they retcon it that it was the Time War. That the Time, like they're one of these planets that the Time War just, they were a casualty of. So I guess to make us feel a little more sorry for them and feel they've been sort of victimized by the Time Lords and the Daleks and whatever else. Which helps in the Capaldi era when you have this, good complex anti-war story in the Zygon invasion/inversion.
Maybe that's why Tom Baker was so unconcerned about the threat of the invasion fleet. And maybe, headcanon this and connect it to Genesis of the Daleks, which is previous season, same recording block, same TARDIS team, that he knew the Time War would probably erupt after that. So that sort of explains his devil may care attitude to everything from this point forward. He's just like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I'm honestly, at this point, I'm not even sure he has the perception filter on, which might explain how Sutekh is able to jump on board, because the Brigadier is within the 73-yard range at the end there, and the Duke is in with the 73-yard range, and everyone's staring at it. It's not a perception filter. It's more of it's just not a very good transport filter.
Yeah, I think this is just after the Pertwee era too. He might have left the polarity reversed.
Yes, there you go.
So that it's look at me, not don't look at me.
But anyway, yes, his recent participation in the events of Genesis of the Daleks may explain why he anticipates a Time War and then is unconcerned with the relative threat of the Zygon fleet, perhaps knowing something in advance about their ultimate fate. So, if so, well done, Dr. Four.
Yeah, so I think we just made up for not connecting the dots earlier by connecting all these other dots. Okay,
one thing we can do is connect dots. Yeah, we should say the one reason why the Zygons are kind of underwritten in this is they weren't supposed to be the main show. The writer, Robert Banks Stewart, and if there's ever been a more Scottish name than Robert Banks Stewart, perhaps it would be Robert Burns Stewart, but it's a pretty Scottish name. But he really, we should say, overall in all of this, he doubles down on the Scottishness. And part of that was focusing on Nessie, was focusing on the Loch Ness Monster. It was all supposed to be about the Loch Ness Monster. The Zygons were originally supposed to be a sideshow. It was really about the the Scarison. Which gets some nice. We should say this gets some lovely Harry Harryhausen style stop motion animation in episode 1, right? And
it does a little bit, yeah.
And thereafter, it's a hand puppet.
Oh, okay, right. Yes, it's definitely a hand puppet.
Yeah.
They could have done better, I gotta say. And I think the evidence for that, and again, it's hard to judge the classic series on special effects because it's all kind of bad, but it's different flavors of bad. Now, the thing I'm going to compare this directly to, the Scarison, I mean, is the Carnival of Monsters.
Yes, exactly where I was going to
also had a sort of a sea monster, which didn't look very good either, but it also had the Drash eggs. The Drash eggs hold up. We said that at the time. They're a great little monster, good special effect, particularly where they're doing the film sequences. And they have that freaky look, partly because they used actual bleached like dog skulls for them. And they did some good work on the sound, on the roar they made. They really thought about it and did some work to make that sound really interesting, unique, and creepy. Here, not as convincing a monster or as good looking in terms of the teeth and the jaws. It's obviously moving slower. I mean, in the Drash Eggs case, it moved slow, but it was like slow motion, so they kind of got away with it. And then here they also have this weird like mooing noise. I think the Scarison does. It's just kind of like it comes across as like belching or something. It's just not menacing. Even though they really do try to sell it, and Baker tries to sell it, even when he's running from it.
Even when he's playing fetch with it.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, points for trying, points for going for it, but I think they could have done better here with that.
All right, well, we should... okay, let me say, first of all, I feel like we've talked this episode down a lot, this story down a lot. I've got to say, for me, this is very much this is my first time watching Terror of the Zygons. Very much a tale of two sets of 2 episodes, as it were. I really enjoyed episode 1, and I really enjoyed episode 3. And I saw a lot of problems with 2 and 4.
Wow. Very selective.
Yeah, it was like on, off. But what I really loved about this, and what I think a lot of fans has loved, is the look. I mean, it looks so, and I'm talking about, the Zygons and their incredible red and green ship that just makes them look so creepy and so like 70s, like fluorescent. You're talking about the
interior.
Yeah.
The interior of the ship is amazing, and the Zygon design is great. Like maybe inadvertently great, but it is great. You see why they were very fondly remembered.
Right, and why they returned, why Moffat returned to them, why they were worthy of the 50th anniversary. But also like the pods where they keep the people, really creepy effect. And I
could have been creepier.
Just got to say, costumes overall, they really lean into a lot of the Scottishness. Obviously, Tom Baker wearing his tam o' shanter, and the Brigadier in his kilt, and all of this stuff. It really, but I've got to give a shout out to Liz Sladen, and she could make that simple white sweater so, like, it's a white fisherman's sweater, and it looks so sexy on her. It's just amazing. I could not take my eyes off her in the scene where she's in the library. And who does not love Sarah Jane after watching something like that? Especially when she sticks her tongue out at Caber, the Duke's Gilly. We should just say his name hasn't come up, probably because you can't pronounce the original Gaelic. But yeah, you got to love the way she sticks her tongue out at him. She is not, afraid of anything. But it shouldn't work, that white sweater and those green jeans that she's got on.
Right.
But they really do. She knocks them out of the park. And you may remember the Chris Evans white sweater in Knives Out that sort of inspired a fandom of its own. I say justice for Sarah's white sweater, because this is even sexier.
Yeah, she looks great. She is great. This is definitely prime time for Sarah and the Doctor.
Yeah.
Not quite so prime time for Harry and the Brigadier. We should note that this is the last story to have Nicholas Courtney as the Brigadier until he would return in Modern Undead for the 20th
Yes.
anniversary.
Yeah, we've got a almost a Brigadier 1975 and on bingo at this point. So
Okay,
rather
kind of
obscure
reaching for
bingo.
those cards now.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but you know what? He did not leave without injecting one more dating controversy. I would like to get right there because, as you know,
right there.
in Britain, right here, we've just had a change of Prime Minister, so this is very much on my mind, and it was very much on the mind of Doctor Who fans in 1975 when they heard the Brigadier pick up the phone and talk to the Prime Minister and call her Madam.
Right. Yes.
And there are two explanations for this. There are two explanations as to who it could be. Let's talk about British politics for a second to bring Americans up to speed.
Well, this is it, right? We're going into the pull to open history corner.
Well, yes, there's one of two history corners here.
Wow! We're gonna get some mileage out of that jingle.
There we go. History corner number one, the political history corner. We'll go on to the Nessie history corner shortly, but political history corner. So, it has been claimed by certain luminaries of Doctor Who at this time that Margaret Thatcher was intended. I believe that's what Hinchcliffe said, the producer Philip Hinchcliffe. I believe it's what the director Douglas Campfield said.
She had just been elected leader of the Conservative Party, right?
She had, yes, in February 1975. So any viewer looking at that would automatically assume that they're talking about a change of party, because this screened in 30th of August 1975. So we'd had half a year of the leader of the opposition for the first time being a lady and being Mrs. Thatcher. And of course, she was not as controversial as she would later become. In fact, a lot of people looked wistfully back on the Margaret Thatcher of the 1970s in later years when she was become the industry-decimating Prime Minister of the of later years. She actually spoke a little more sweetly here. Anyway.
She didn't become Prime Minister until 79, is that right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, so this is like 4 years in advance. And so, but being a parliamentary system, elections sort of happen here and there, as opposed to on a 4-year schedule.
They can happen up to 5 years away.
Right.
So
very similar in Canada, yeah.
Yes, so this would be consistent with a 1980 dating. This is consistent with Pyramids of Mars, who many new fans have just seen, courtesy of the return of Sutekh.
And the very next story after this one.
Planet of Evil is the next story. It was actually the next story that was filmed. The next story that was filmed was Pyramids of Mars, but the next story in running order was Planet of Evil.
Is that right? Let me check that. But go ahead. Keep going. Gotcha.
Yeah, so, but the other explanation that Nicholas Courtney himself has said, first of all, he's claimed that he ad-libbed this, which is disputed by other Doctor Who veterans, that he ad-libbed a madam rather than a sir. But he said that he intended Shirley Williams, who was a rising star of the Labour Party, who was then in power as Harold Wilson's government, shortly to be Jim Callaghan's government. And Shirley Williams was in the cabinet, so many people thought of her as a future prime minister. So
interesting.
You could have plausible. Yes, you have plausible deniability. Terence Dix has also said Shirley Williams, but basically, it's nice. You can basically interpret it either way as a Doctor Who fan.
But as a dating controversy point. So I'm not sure when when had the previous election been at this point in August?
1974.
So you're thinking like if it's going to be 4 to 5 years, probably it's Thatcher. But if it's some kind of succession thing, like basically like there might be other circumstances short of an election
Yes.
that might trigger the other
Honestly,
scenario, right? So
it really is. It's an alternate road that the Labour Party didn't take, but should have taken when Wilson stepped down. I think at the end of 75, beginning of 76, it was very unexpected. There have been a lot of conspiracy theories about why he did it so suddenly. Was he in declining health? What was there gold in a secret bank account? I think is one conspiracy theory. But he then the Labour Party had to pick a successor, right? And Williams would have been a better choice than Jim Callaghan, who gave us the winter of discontent in 78, 79, with a lot of strikes. He didn't get on well with the strikers, and perhaps Labour would have retained more voters, perhaps more female voters, who went over to the Conservatives in 1979 if it had been Shirley Williams at the helm, and perhaps she wouldn't have had the winter of discontent to begin with. So, yeah.
Interesting. Well,
if only they'd listened to the Brig.
Well, the Brig, speaking of effective leaders, I got to say, someone who did do quite well in his last outing, I would say, is him.
Yeah.
And he is looking pretty good. He's got the kilt early on, pandering to the Scottishness of the whole thing. I mean, episode 1 is all, are we ever in Scotland? Like, that's just the big mess. There's the bagpipes blasting. We talked about the Doctor and Harry's actually wearing his regular scarf while he's got his like tartan one.
So there was a scene. There was a deleted scene that I believe they filmed where the TARDIS lands and it's invisible. And first of all, yeah, that's a bit curious, right? I don't think that's happened before. And also, if it was invisible, why would the Doctor try to change that? Which they have that day in this.
Well,
scene,
and why
right?
even have a perception filter?
Yeah.
You can just outrightly turn it invisible, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you could make a case for either way, but it's clearly something that isn't a regular feature.
So he comes out of the TARDIS. He's like, wait a minute, this is invisible. Goes back in, and also, by the way, realizes he's in Scotland. Goes back in, and his scarf is off, and it's on Harry. And the TARDIS actually appears, and he's wearing his tam o' shanter and looking a lot more Scottish. And they set off. So you had that originally, and I guess they cut it for time and confusion, and just the fact that it just makes no sense for the TARDIS to be invisible.
Yeah.
But
I do feel like maybe that's a Terrence Dicks stepping in moment. Hold on.
It may well be. It may well be. And certainly it would explain, though, if you're looking for more headcanon as to why the Doctor was so careless as to let the God of Death board his vessel 2 stories later, then you can, look no further than that deleted scene, which maybe now we should reinstate. And we should say that invisibility was, creating problems with the perception filter, and the Doctor really should have reset it to factory conditions.
Yeah. Good advice. So the Brigadier, I wanted to say, I think I mentioned this in my TLDW, but I think he actually does some good stuff in this one toward the end. Like they do blow up the Zygon ship.
They do.
Which is like, all right.
And I've got to ask, was that a big enough bang for you, Pete?
It's a good final line between the Doctor and the Brigadier. So, I got to say, the Brigadier is good. Again, I think it's actually the Doctor who sets the self-destruct or something in it, right? Another thing I sort of mentioned. But they do track it, and the Doctor does get that message out to the Brigadier, who sort of competently surrounds it. So even though Nick Courtney's good, and again, like I say, I think the Brigadier is fine in this episode. This to me sort of underscored sort of one of the more, not really unfortunate, because the unit era was time for the unit era to end, but that he just didn't really have chemistry with Tom Baker. Yeah. And I think they've been on record somewhat about that in various interviews. But you can see it on screen. I mean, the Doctor seems kind of more annoyed, genuinely annoyed that he's been called back, and just in a sense doesn't really want to spend time here anymore. It's like, you're my college friends. Okay.
Yeah.
I've moved on. I'm doing cosmic stuff now.
That's right. And he's
We're kind
an
of not.
he's an energy hipster, because at first of all, he doesn't want to investigate the blowing up of oil rigs, because oil is so last decade, man. He's all into hydrogen now. He says
Right?
that at
That was a
one
weird
point.
one.
Yeah.
Not too weird, because, like hydrogen has been noted as a potential energy source, and people
Yeah.
have developed fuel cells and all that stuff.
Yeah, bit
so-
flammable, Apparently, the Doctor
There
knows
are issues.
that he knows the Bismarck, but he doesn't know about another German vessel that went down in flames, as it were, the Hindenburg.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, that wasn't the
in
fuel
your-
in that case, but
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
it did eventually catch fire. I mean, with helium in the Hindenburg, that would not have ended with so much devastation and so much humanity.
Hydrogen has some issues as a fuel source. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
But
here we are arguing with Tom Baker about hydrogen. Keep it right here, folks.
yeah, but I mean, I think they're both good individually. So just praising the Brigadier. I think this is an episode that really shows Tom Baker is starting to hit his stride. Like, I think he has a lot of great memorable lines. Particularly when he's confronting the Zygons. Like, he talks about them, you can't rule the world in hiding. You've got to come out and wave a tentacle sometimes from the balcony.
Yes.
Like, just genius line. And even his little asides, there's a little bit at the end there where Broton's like, you were asking too many questions. Well, it's the only way to learn. Anyway, what about blah, blah, blah? Like, that's a very doctory moment.
Yes,
really
there's
smart.
the wonderful scene where you're sort of waiting, and it's all about the timing. Like the door where Broton enters, takes about 30 seconds to open, and then Tom Baker says social call, and it's just bang on
Right?
with the timing. But you got to say, Tom Baker is also taking it seriously, because
Right.
his screams of pain. I mean, you almost feel like, I'm sure this has happened, that they took those stills from where he's sort of being tortured in, I think, episode 4. They got him hanging on to a thing that I guess they're electrifying. I can't even remember what it is, but I do remember the look of agony on his face, and it feels like Dave Gibbons used that for the Doctor Who comic strip, like, straight away, because there's so much need for the Doctor to be in pain, and this is it, man. I mean, like, he's a better actor of pain, I think, than any Doctor before him. Not necessarily since, but certainly before him.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. He definitely takes this very seriously. There's even a bit where he has to hypnotize Sarah earlier, and I think if you don't take that seriously, you're easily sort of taken out of it, because it just seems a little weird, because he's kind of almost hypnotizing her to not breathe, which sounds a little impossible. But his reaction when they're like, I forget if it's Harry or the Brigadier, like, tries to, like, go to her, and he's like, no, don't touch her, like, you could kill her, blah blah blah. And then he's got to bring her out of it. Like, that was okay.
He's got to bring her out of.
Take.
He's got to bring her out of the spell that he learned from a Tibetan monk, who apparently do spells now.
Maybe he's just being figurative.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, in that context, it does rather make more sense that everything's gone so over the top Scottish, because we're just sort of painting nationalities with a very broad brush here. The Tibetan monk that can teach you not to breathe, a very mystical guru kind of thing to do. Yeah.
So this is definitely the season of duplication, humans replacing, or things replacing humans, and clones, right? So this is the first one. And in this one, I think the idea, I mean, it's really quite good. And I think the creepiness of it really comes across, because they have that nurse. I forget her name, Sister something or other.
Yeah.
It's Sister Lamont.
Sister Lamont. Yes. Yeah. She's a wonderful old, battle axe of a nurse, a classic NHS type of the time.
And it's creepy, and I really like the bit where Harry's replaced. You definitely have to do that. You got to get one of the leads. And it's obviously the right choice, because we frankly, just care more about Sarah. So when she's in danger, but not just in danger, like, her being attacked by the Zygon is kind of okay. But when she's being attacked by Harry in episode 2, and he's got a
Yes.
pitchfork. That's
Yes.
really visceral.
He does a good
yeah.
Lear, I've got to say, Ian
Mhm.
Marter. In this, his unfortunately his final outing, and
No, not his final outing. He comes back in the Android Invasion.
Android Invasion. Okay, but his final
that's
as a
2 or
TARDIS
3
regular.
stories later. Final as a TARDIS regular, but the Brigadier doesn't come back in that one. So yeah, the Android Invasion I think is the last like unit story where units are actually involved, and then it just gets mentioned every now and then.
So we should talk about the reason why Harry kind of disappears here.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, it's kind of believable, right? Because he's just sort of been on one long adventure, starting with Nerva Station in the Ark in space,
Right.
And it's
you wonder if he's had a chance to sleep.
Yeah.
Like how long this was even taking.
Yeah, this is before they issued companions with bedrooms. So he's been on his feet for like 4 or 5 episodes now. The poor guy. But, he's also a doctor, so he's used to it.
Yeah.
And
he's also used to being called an imbecile, I'm sure.
Yeah, that poor...
handling landmines.
Oh, poor... Yeah, he's been through a lot, and he really don't get no respect in many of these stories. But the whole point was that he was kind of a hedge against an old doctor being cast instead of Tom Baker, because there were many older famous actors who were up for the role, as opposed to Tom Baker, who was almost an unknown at that point. So they thought they might need another Ian, right?
But so they got an Ian.
They went a little bit too literal. Which is interesting. Ian, a new Ian Chesterfield, who kind of looks like Ian Chesterfield. I know, Chesterton. Sorry, Ian. But yeah, and so he was. You didn't need, and Tom Baker actually does a lot of stunts in this one, right? Like he's Pertwee-esque in his action. Like he's hopping into the car, he's running, and he looks better than Pertwee because he's got his scarf out behind him.
Yeah.
Great for the photo stills. So Harry was kind of superfluous to demands for Hinchcliffe felt. So that's why he's summarily written out. But it's nice to have him get to play a Zygon version of himself. I think he does very well. But then just the ending is a bit strange because they've literally just come up to Scotland via train to get back to the TARDIS for a goodbye scene, and then he's going to hop on back on the train.
Yeah, I guess that is a little weird because the journey from Loch Ness to London, I understand, is like if you're going by car, it's like 9 or 10 hours or something. Maybe I don't know if trains faster, but I imagine
probably
comparable.
Yeah, depending on whether there was a strike on, because there are quite a few British Rail strikes.
But they gloss over it so quickly. Like just suddenly they're back in London and they're even at Unit HQ, and the I guess the energy conference is right by the Thames.
Yeah.
So all that is fine, but you kind of then they actually pay attention decently to like, oh, we're not in the village anymore, right? Because that Scottish, whatever, the inn where they had their base, you don't really see that again.
Yes.
But then suddenly, they're all there back in the moors, I guess. They're in Scotland, and they're just kind of going, even though I think it was filmed somewhere else. But
none of this was filmed in Scotland. I should just say it was all on the south coast of England.
Yeah, there it is. It's West Sussex. That's what I had the note here. And they're all just there again. It's like, didn't anyone say, why are we going back? Like, I mean, we defeated this garrison, blew up the Zygons. I mean, like, let's just hang out here. And, we'll send someone for your TARDIS doctor if you really want it. Like, this could have been the first helicopter scene.
Yes, exactly. This whole trip on the Intercity could have just been a helicopter pickup. But maybe the Brigadier knew what the Doctor says in Day of the Doctor, that he said he told him, I don't like being picked up. So that sounded better in his head. But and that perhaps is an interesting place to segue to the fact that there's a lot of suggestiveness in this unintentionally. And I know that is it the discontinuity guy that sort of does the favorite double entendre from every episode? There are quite a few in this, and there are a lot of visual ones, we got to say, that
Well, when you got the Zygon
controls.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole thing about was that a big enough bang for you? Like, I mean, you could definitely take Terror of the Zygons, and maybe we at Pull to Open will do this one day. We could call it Dr. Ooh La La, and just do a video where you kind of string together all of the double entendres visually and hourly in this story. It would be quite a few. But yes, to go back to Harry, like maybe okay, I'm going to headcanon this. He had to go all the way back to the TARDIS to pick up his stuff. He'd left a few things in the TARDIS, and he wanted to just go home on the Intercity. But isn't it extraordinary? Like, you compare it to Ruby leaving in Empire of Death. As Harry's not, like, standing there at the door going, I love you! I love you, Doctor!
You know what it probably was? You know what he probably wanted to collect? Remember, he had that scene in Revenge of the Cybermen with Sarah on Voga? And he's like, I could have a solid gold stethoscope or blah, blah, blah. And, all this. And he probably pocketed some gold.
Oh,
and so
Harry.
he left that in the TARDIS. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to do that. And that's maybe why we never see him again. Because, you know, there's all the stuff he did, Hush Hush and Portin' Down. And then ended up designing the Zygon virus. And maybe he had enough time to do that because he was now independently wealthy.
And thus does Harry become a true Scotsman, by going all the way back for his hoard of gold, because then we got to say, and this is all okay, because all of this is written by a Scot. We got to say all of this, you know, anti-Scottish stereotypes. Right there in the very next scene, we end Terror of the Zygons on a Scottish stereotype, which is, you may have heard that they're a little bit frugal. They're known to be a little bit frugal north of the border. Where the Duke says to the Brigadier, do they have return tickets? Do you have return tickets? And the Brigadier says, yes, I imagine so. And the Duke says, you should have taken them and got your refund, man. I thought you were a Scotsman. He's encouraging the Brig to cheat on his expenses, basically, is what's going on in that scene. Because he's supposed to be a parsimonious Scot. And this is what passes for Scottish representation on the BBC from a Scottish writer.
Well, how do the Scots feel about immigrants, specifically huge cybernetic sea monsters? Because it seems like they're okay with it. So let's do a little part 2 of our history corner, shall we?
That's right, the Loch Ness monster Nessie, who we now know is a cyborg, which is a bit weird. I guess that's to explain how it's been around for so long.
I guess, yeah, that's a fair point. I kind of wondered what they were trying to go for there, because nothing's really made of it being a cyborg. Well, it's like they say it's a cyborg. They also have this line about how it's their mother beast somehow, that it sort of provides for them, and the only way they can survive is by, you know, essentially whatever they get out of the teat of the Scarison, I assume. And
yes.
You know,
which, to everyone who complained about Luke Skywalker drinking milk directly from a beast in The Last Jedi, remember, that's basically what the Zygons are doing here. And we don't even know. I mean, given how handsy they are with those controls, maybe they are literally sucking from the teat of the Scarison. Or maybe they are civilized enough to bottle it first. But yeah, that's what's going on. But anyway, it does make sense if you headcanon it as this explains the earliest reported sighting of a monster in the vicinity of Loch Ness, which, Pete, if you were to guess which century that earliest story was from, what would you say?
I'm going to say 16th.
16th. Lower.
Lower. 10th.
Lower.
9th.
Lower.
1st.
Higher.
Okay, how are we getting
7th century.
Got it.
Yes, in the life of Saint Columba by a local writer in the land of the Picts. He was actually an Irish monk who was over there and encountered a man who had been killed when he was attacked by a water beast that had marked him. And then he does, you know, the typical Irish saint thing. We make the sign of the cross, and the sea monster goes away as if it had been pulled back with ropes. And it's a miracle, everyone. He
Must
kept
have been one of those little summoning devices in someone's pocket.
Exactly. That's So Saint Columba. Has anyone seen Saint Columba and the Doctor together? Maybe Inspector Columbo can investigate that one. Just one more question, Doctor. Where were you on or about the 7th century AD in Pictish Scotland? But then you had to fast forward to the 19th century for reports of animals in the vicinity. But it really didn't start until the 30s, where there were letters written. And that's where you start to see the compounding effect of, the original newspaper article, and then another newspaper article, and then people coming up specifically to try to find the Loch Ness Monster. And it's been going on ever since. And doesn't matter how many times you sweep the entire lake with sonar to prove there's no damn monster in there. Doesn't matter how many times you say that it could be logs with gas escaping, bobbing up to the surface, or it could be otters, it could be other forms of sea life. And it doesn't matter that you point out that one of the first reports in 1933 mirrored the appearance of a sea creature in King Kong, which came out that year. People still believe. They still want to believe.
Well, didn't they have that photo, the super famous photo that was published in every single conspiracy book and everything ever about the Loch Ness Monster, which I don't think was ever definitively shown to be a fake. But then the person who created it confessed on his deathbed, I heard, that it was a fake.
Yeah. I think that was the 34 photograph.
So I don't want to party poop too much, right? Because this is the Loch Ness Monster is a fun thing. They're doing a fun thing here. And they literally have it go to London and be seen by everybody at one point, which is kind of a funny moment.
Yes, you're right. It was Sperling who said this.
He confessed that the photo was bad.
Yes. Yeah. On his deathbed, that they basically put together a toy submarine. And I love this that they sank the model when the water bailiff approached. The water bailiff was the bloke who's in charge of Loch Ness. It was such a Scottish thing to have a bailiff in charge of a loch. But yes, they got very rich selling that photo to the Daily Mail.
Well, yeah, that's because it wasn't a fake photo. It was just a fake thing they took a picture of. So that's probably why it could never really be definitively disproven. Yeah. Well, fiction, stranger than truth, I guess. But going back to the monster in London, it's kind of funny how often Doctor Who did this. In that it did really public kind of alien invasions and then just sort of forgot about them. But that's kind of how TV was back then. It was so episodic. We had talked about this a little bit. This is a long time ago when we did Ambassadors of Death. And even Terror of the Autons, I think, where there's the museum where there's the space rock, but it was sort of definitively an alien thing. And so it's in a museum. Where's the cover up? There isn't one. It's just, this is happening, and then we just do other stuff in the next episode. So this is a little more self-aware about it. I think the line is a 50-foot monster can't swim up the Thames and attack a large building without some people noticing.
Right.
But you know what politicians are like.
Yes.
which is kind of like that moment in the next Doctor years later, when it's wow, that giant Cyberman attacked London. People are going to be talking about this for forever. The Doctor's yeah, weird. that.
Yeah. I guess this is the beginning of the era of extreme cynicism in politicians, right? We're in Watergate era where we're about to get Deadly Assassin, which is Doctor Who getting really cynical about politics.
I guess I would say, just to sort of go somewhere with that, I prefer figuring it out somehow. You don't necessarily. I think these kind of get out of jail free lines are kind of cop outs. I do probably prefer when at least Russell Davies 1.0, where he sort of decided to have a switch flip with the Christmas invasion.
Yep.
Because that ended up being fairly interesting. Obviously, they've kind of rebooted again and again, sometimes officially, sometimes unofficially, in terms of the public knowledge of alien and paranormal stuff. But I like going there into sort of a zone where it's like, oh yeah, like now the world, everyone just sort of accepts it, and now we're doing that. Wouldn't mind seeing that again.
Yes. So another thing people at the time wouldn't mind seeing again was Terror of the Zygons itself. You just mentioned what they were doing on TV at the time. The whole reason that this kicked off season 13 instead of ending season 12 is because the BBC were terrified of what ITV was launching. The other channel, I would say the only other channel, but no, we also had BBC Two at that time. One of 3 channels at the time. They were going to launch Space 1999. Have you ever seen that one, Pete?
I have bits of it anyway.
So the episode 1 of Space 1999 ran opposite episode 2 of Terror of the Zygons.
Interesting.
And there was a 2 million person drop in the viewership between episode 1 and 2 of the Zygons. But then, for week 3, those 2 million people came right back. So literally what happened, for all this terror of Space 1999, it lasted 1 week. Right, people watch that first episode and they're like, "What? The moon is like going on a space adventure? Like, what the hell? Like, I don't think I'm going to watch this. I want to go back to those guys with the giant suckers." Which is kind of good because episode 2 kind of drags, right? I mean, I mentioned this as that was one of my less favorite episodes. It's kind of a bit padded, so you can sort of pick it up with episode 3. And
not enough bagpipes in that episode, I'll say.
Yes.
Not enough Scott Con in episode 2. Pick it back up.
Episode 2 is basically just they're nerve gassing everyone so they don't pay attention to the fact that the Scarison is going across the moor.
Yeah.
Which just makes no sense. So, all you're really missing is that wonderful scene in the barn with Ian Marter turning evil.
Yeah. Well, we got to talk a little bit more about that evil plot in a minute. But before we do that, it's time to cut to the first of the 4 questions to Doomsday. That first question, by the way, is why did the randomizer take us here?
Well,
say you, Chris.
I think the randomizer, after taking us to its birth, after taking us to its first, body conscious moment, perhaps the randomizer was worried that it was putting him on too many pounds. It wanted to get Beachbody ready, so that's why it took us to Adipose Industries. And now it feels like it wants to go into its heritage. We do know the randomizer's favorite doctor is Capaldi. So it likes a Scottish accent. And
Zygon encounter?
Yes, and it likes Zygons. So, Zygons in Scotland, it was only a matter of time. Yeah.
Fair. I feel like we'd already talked about this before, but it's sort of keeping us in the radius of Pyramids of Mars.
Yes.
So there's that.
Yes, it definitely has allowed us to talk about ways in which the Doctor might have allowed Sutekh on board, and perhaps it saw 73 yards with the most, sort of stereotypical Welsh horror extras, and it was like, no, I want that, but for real. Like, give me real stereotypical Scottish, people with bagpipes and kilts. With nobody in the pub to say, honestly, it's a little bit racist here.
That would have been like if Simon Pegg had written it. So I also think there's an interesting contrast here because we just come from Empire of Death, which had a heartbreaking companion leaving scene.
Yes.
Where Ruby tells the Doctor she loves him. He's sort of breaking up, but can't say anything back. And it's just a very emotional moment. And then you get one of the most blasé companion leaving scenes, which probably used to be a lot more common back in the classic series, particularly with the male companions, I'll just say.
Yes.
Where Harry just says, like, yeah, I'm just going to take the train.
I would love it. First of all, I love it if we didn't end on a Scottish stereotype. I know we've had our fun at Scotland's expense in this podcast, but maybe not ending on that stereotype would have been good. I would love if they would just add a special scene with Mrs. Flood saying, "And there ends the story of Harry Sullivan, who had a lovely time going back with a gold stethoscope on the Intercity and became a very wealthy doctor. But what about the doctor, you say? Well, I'm afraid his story ends in terror." That's right, terror.
Not this terror, more terror. Not the terror that with the Zygons.
Yeah, exactly. It just writes itself. Yes. RTD, call us. We need to do another Tales of the TARDIS here.
Moving on to the second question, which is, what if the evil plot had succeeded?
So, yes.
Yeah.
So, what if Broton? For one possibility is, what if Broton had realized that they just needed to hang out and chill for a few decades, wait for humanity to melt the polar ice caps? Maybe maybe they could get into the automobile business. Just encourage people to drive gas guzzlers. Ooh, they could have produced the world's first SUV. That would be a great Zygon trick to encourage humanity to melt polar ice caps faster.
There you go.
But you're probably going to say that Broton is going to have a slightly more, an evil plot that takes less time.
Yeah, I mean, it could have been a lot less time, frankly. Like, I feel like the Zygons are dithering constantly about whether they want to kill anybody. Like, they're gassing unit, but they're not killing them. Mm-hmm. They're wrecking these oil rigs, which is killing some people, but not that many. And they have this idea that they're going to turn the human race into slave labor to terraform their own planet so it's more suitable for Zygons, which is like, I just don't think that's going to work out for you. I think you're just going to have to start slaughtering people, and why not just start killing people and use the Scaracen as essentially your bagman, right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's not. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He brags early in the story that somehow even a nuclear missile can't kill the Scaracen, which sounds like bragging. That's like, come on, dude. I think it just sounds implausible,
I gotta say, Broton, and first of all, it's not until I heard his name in your accent that I now I can't not hear the bro in Broton. Broton! Broton is like the new Brosif. Anyway, yeah, Broton's a bit of a bro. He's not really that smart. A lot of bros, he knows one thing, and that is organic crystallography, which we haven't really mentioned. That immortal line, which is actually delivered by the Duke Zygon.
Right.
Who is Broton? Broton turning into the Duke? I can't remember. Was it?
Yeah, we don't see the real Duke, and so we see them all inside the ship. So yeah, all those lines are Broton.
Yeah. So after he thinks he's killed the Doctor, he says, "It is well. I underestimated his intelligence, but he underestimated the power of organic crystallography." Which is there any more 70s style technobabble than organic crystallography? You want it to be organic 100-yard crystallography, but also you got to get crystals in there because
Broton would fit right into the nuthatch. He'd just be right in there doing his organic crystallography with the fungus and munching on some of that with Joe and. God, what was her husband's name?
Yes. Oh, I shudder to think what would happen. I shudder to remember his name. I don't remember it. Yeah, it is sort of the Green Death, but for Scotland, isn't it?
A little bit.
Yeah.
But all I can think is that he turns the Scaracen loose unless the world does what he says. He's more bloodthirsty, so he kills people, including the Doctor. Presumably, the Doctor doesn't regenerate. You basically get a turn left universe here, where the Doctor, sorry, not the Doctor, Unit, Sarah, and Harry just got to team up. Maybe Torchwood's there, and
Captain
they
Jack
then have to
arrives.
really take on the Zygons. Yeah, exactly. It becomes a little bit similar. We saw that bit in Turn Left where they deal with the Sontarans by, I think Jack sacrifices himself or something. There'd be something like that.
Oh God!
So it'd just be higher stakes.
Now I really want to see a special edition where Captain Jack comes in at the end, takes one look at Sarah in that sexy sweater, takes one look at Harry in his uniform, and camera just like zooms in Zygon style to Captain Jack's face, and he just raises an eyebrow. Big smile.
You don't want to know what I'm thinking, right?
I love it.
There might even be one more person there because we have to answer the third question, which is, where is the Clara Splinter? Clara Oswald, of course, splintered in time at the end of The Name of the Doctor. She's somewhere in every single Doctor Who story. Where is she in Terror of the Zygons?
Yes, well, we should say first of all that we were considering after Empire of Death that we were going to have to make this segment the where's the Clara Splinter and where is the Susan Triad on the edge of the perception filter, but that doesn't kick in yet. We've mercifully got one more story before that kicks in. So it is still the Clan Oswald is in this somewhere. I gotta say, I think she's probably running around amping up the Scottishness everywhere.
Okay.
Really giving bagpipe
Clara.
lessons to the publican. Making sure that he's playing Flower of the Forest, which is indeed...
She might also be making sure people are mentioning haggis at every opportunity.
Yes,
there we go.
Supplying the haggis to the oil companies, which is why that's literally the first Scottish stereotype we see is the guy on the oil rig asking for more haggis in the next delivery.
Yeah. Has that ever happened anywhere? Let alone oil rigs. I suppose.
Yeah.
I've actually had haggis before. It's all right.
Maybe she is also there to pump oxygen into that room because the Doctor may think that he learned how you don't require breath from a Tibetan monk. But in typical Doctor style, I'm sure that's just, there's been some game of telephone down the line and he hasn't fully understood what the Tibetan monk was trying to tell him. So, Clara has to cover up.
I thought maybe she owned the barn that Sarah and Zygon Harry end up in. And that's why she's conveniently sort of left a picket fence or whatever that was below the hayloft that's all sticking up that the Zygon eventually sort of impales itself on. So nice and convenient.
That could do it. She might be somewhere in the village. Or she might be... She might be the one who makes the Duke forget that he's head of the Scottish Energy Commission. Which is just...
it's like they improvised that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess I am. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're not going to improvise what we think of this story in a minute, folks. But before we get to that, we are going to talk to you about our website. It's called pulltoopen.net. And there you can subscribe to our newsletter where we have full notes on every random episode, including this one. There's always stuff we don't get to, so it's definitely well worth the subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon. I know we mentioned that earlier. I'm saying it again. What the hell? Patreon.com/pulltoopen. And we didn't go over all the social media. So here it is. TikTok, Pull to Open. Blue Sky, Pull to Open. X, Pull to Open 63. Instagram, Facebook, Threads, also Pull to Open 63. And I'm done.
And yes, and if you didn't catch any of that, in the words of one of the Scottish doctors, Google it.
And now it is time for the final question, the ultimate question, the only question that matters for Terror of the Zygons. What did we think of this story? The Pull to Open rating system has 6 ratings for now. There's the Dalek, which is a good episode of Doctor Who, the rating that a good episode earns. The Ogron, which is for an irredeemably bad episode of Doctor Who. The Professor Hater, which is for an episode that is not so great, but hey, at least they tried something. The Viscount Banger, which we reserve for the best of the best. The Fixed Point in Time, which is a show beyond rating, usually for reasons of nostalgia. Or The Lady Cassandra, which is a paper-thin plot, but hey, at least it looks good.
Well,
What do you like?
You may be noticing that I've been doing a lot of hybrids lately. In fact, I know that you have noticed this. You've mentioned it in the past. But I got to say, I think this is a hybrid because I had such a different reaction to episodes 1 and 3 and to episodes 2 and 4. And one of those hybrids, one part of that, I think is clearly the Cassandra. Because there are definitely problems with the plot here. It's a bit paper thin, but it's beautiful. It's beautiful. That red and green light. I just, and the costumes and you really.
You're thinking of that sweater. That's what you're thinking.
I am never gonna not think of that sweater, Pete. That sweater is going to haunt me for at least the rest of the life of this podcast, and I'll be mentioning it often. But no, it's a really pretty episode. And I've got to say, for the other rating, I was definitely considering whether this was a big enough banger for you, Brigadier. Because we do already have a hybrid banger in the books for the Zygon invasion/inversion.
Right.
If you remember, we made that a hybrid banger, but purely because of Capaldi's speeches. But this one, I don't think it quite rises to Laird of the Banger status. But I did enjoy myself, and I do think episodes 1 and 3 were worth a Dalek. So there you have it, Dalek Cassandra.
All right. It's a Dalek Cassandra for you. For me, it is all Dalek because I feel I needed to make a full commitment on this one. And it's almost like for Scott Khan alone, which there's so much Scottishness here. I think it's over the top in places, but it's kind of charming, Like I said, Tom Baker, Liz Sladen, they're both great. I don't think I praised Liz Sladen enough. There's a moment where she is going into the Zygon ship for the first time. I think this was like it might have been episode 4, maybe 3.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way her reactions are, where she's kind of like, the door opens and she kind of like does this like something's going to come out, and
she goes in, she goes out. She goes in,
and she's
she goes
kind of
out.
testing it as she goes around. Like, it's just so real. Like, this was the whole thing with Liz Sladen. Like, she was just such a real companion person putting in these situations, but also very resourceful. And she's full on here. It's great. We always talk about the Zygons and their shape-shifting, their design.
Mm-hmm.
All of that's awesome. And just having, having the ambition. We're gonna have the Loch Ness Monster attack London. Sure, it's gonna just look like just a neck coming over a bad model set or some matte painting or some weird photographs. But hey, we're doing it.
Absolutely, this is definitely Doctor Who at its most ambitious on minimal budget. Right, we're going to blow up oil rigs. We're going to nerve gas an entire Scottish village, and yes, we're going to send Nessie down to London, and to attack the Prime Minister. And we're going to do all that on a very Scottish budget, you might say.
You might say. So I'll just say also, I was very tempted to also do a hybrid. Maybe I would have given into it, but part of the reason was because my daughter felt like this was two different stories. She liked it, but she said there was like two monster mysteries. Like there's a monster mystery with the Zygons, and then you have a monster story with the Loch Ness Monster. And I think she found the Zygons more interesting. But she did feel like there's like two different things going on here. And I thought like, that's probably fairly accurate. But like I say, I think there's enough good stuff in both of those that I'll give it over the Dalek edge for me for both.
Well, a Dalek Zygon it is, or a Zygon Dalek where the little balls on the side become suckers. There you go. I'd kind of like to see that. And it's kind of sad that we now, Pete, have to bid farewell forever to the Zygons.
For the Zygons. Yeah.
Unless they crop up in Shooty's second season.
We even got them in Legopolis, that little cameo.
Yeah.
Got it all.
I gotta say, Broton, we hardly knew ye. But yes,
one thing we also don't know, guys, is how you feel about Terror of the Zygons. So don't forget, go to your Spotify app right now and vote for your rating of Terror of the Zygons, and we will report those ratings, what everybody thought, in a future Pull to Open. But for now, it is time for us to take the Intercity back to Loch Ness, get in our own time ship, and
it's time to let Zygons be Zygons and move forward. Yes, that's right.
We almost got through this without that, but we did it, and we're activating the randomizer.
It's time to use the randomizer. It's time to fire that up. The randomizer has two components. Pete is sitting at the controls of the first. They're weirdly mushroom-shaped controls that he's manipulating right now. That's the Codex, which uses organic crystallography to list all of the Doctor Who stories in sequential order. Whereas I am using the other component, which is the Executor, aka random.org, which produces random results based on the number of Zygon ships blowing up in the atmosphere and the amount of nerve gas that is filtered up there from a Scottish village to give us a true random number. But I need the number of stories that we have yet to visit on Pull to Open, which of course has risen since the last time we did this. Because
we filled it in in anticipation of the season ending. So we actually gave ourselves a chance to come to the last two-parter in the last time we rolled the dice. So it actually hasn't. Right now, the number is at 188.
188. Fantastic. There's no dating controversy over that. It is 88 at the end of the number. And wow, and we do, I'm just checking, by the way, we do have Legend of Ruby Sunday and Empire of Death as one. Yes. Because I'm not sure we knew the last time whether it would.
They're one.
Definitively, they are one story. Okay.
Exactly.
So, 188 stories, and before I hit this button, we do like to whisper Zygon style to the randomizer, very creepily in its ear, in the hopes that it will listen to us and take us somewhere that we want to go. And I got to say that we did ask for Armageddon Factor, that there may be a bit of a time delay on randomizer requests here, because remember, after Armageddon Factor, we asked... You said, take us to an 80s story. I said, take us to a 70s story. You also mentioned, well, hey, it could be a UNET story, dating controversy. Here we go to one, there we went to, just one turn of the randomizer later to a story that could be 75, or it could be 79, or it could be 80, or, we don't know what's happening with female Prime Minister there.
Yeah, so even if the randomizer does not satisfy us immediately because of the timey-wimey nature of this podcast, it might just do it the following story or right when you guys are hearing this. So, we got to give it some challenges. So what's your challenge?
Well, there are two ways to go here, right? If we go forward in time, then we enter the Sutekh era. Because we've done Planet of Evil, we've done Pyramids of Mars. There's absolutely no way that we can't go forward from this and not go into the era where Sutekh has wrapped himself around the TARDIS. Correct. So I'm going to say, let's stay away from Sutekh randomizer. I'm a bit worried that because the randomizer was born in an episode when Sutekh was wrapped around the TARDIS, that maybe the Sutekh is responsible for the rat. Maybe the Sutekh is control. Maybe the Sutekh is whispered into the ear of the randomizer, and it's really Sutekh controlling this. So, I say let's go to a Sutekh-free era. Let's go backwards.
Huh. Okay, that's cool. I wonder if, thinking about that. I can't even now remember it, but the Twice Upon a Time, would that count?
Yes.
Because that's kind of both.
Ooh.
Yeah. So maybe I'll just ask for that.
Oh my goodness! If Sutekh had hopped TARDISes at that point,
right?
Oh my goodness! It could be everything from 10th planet onwards.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
That's a little big finish to be waiting to be written. No, I'm not going to get to Sutekh obsessed with mine. I'm just going to say the Doctor is strangely obsessed with teeth for about 5 minutes in this, and proves that there's a big beast by looking at the orthodontology, which I guess is a new term that predates orthodontics. When he's checking things out. So I will ask for some more teeth, which I guess is either asking for more Tom Baker.
I was going to say, teeth and curls.
Or just more beastly monsters, not the metallic kind. Let's see something with some real teeth.
So are cyborgs allowed, or are you done with cyborgs?
Well, if they have teeth, but we already did Bitey the Cybermat.
Yes, we did. Yes, oh, good old Bitey. I miss you, Bitey. All right, it's time to hit the generate button. If you'll give me a countdown in Scottish style, sir.
All right, here we go. 4, 3, 2, 1.
I'm a champ!
78. I don't think it listened to me.
We're past. Whoa! Okay, we are at the trial of a Time Lord. Terror of the Vervoids. We're gone from terror to terror.
Terror to terror. That's crazy. How many terrors even are there in the Codex?
Well, hey, funny you should ask.
Yeah, let's find out. And Terror of the Vervoids. 7 terrors. How many terrors have we done?
I don't know. I don't think we have. We definitely don't have Terror Bingo because there's the Macro Terror.
I think the randomizer is once again brought to you by Disney Plus because, of course, Mrs. Flood told us the Doctor's story ends in terror. So maybe the Doctor's story will not end until we've done all the terrors.
There it is.
Yes.
There it is. Too apt. Thank you, Mrs. Flood, for getting us over to some more terror. No, and you know what else? Vervoids, I'll just say.
But what else is apt? Isn't that Mel's story?
It is. It's her first. This is the first appearance of Mel.
It's the first time that Sutekh encountered Mel.
Oh, that's true. That's it. That must be why she was so easy to take over.
OMG.
Interesting. Oh, wow. Okay, good stuff. Terror of the Vervoids, guys. It's happening. Next time you tune your podcast dial to Pull to Open. That's what this is. It's a podcast. And then the podcasts are great things to follow or subscribe to. You can also follow us on social media. As I mentioned a couple minutes ago, we're at Pull to Open and Pull to Open 63, pulltoopen.net. Google it and let us know what you think of things. And feel free to reach out on any of those networks with emojis, comments, and we would be happy to engage.
Yes, and I just want to say, Colin Baker, if you're out there, you don't even need to subscribe at the Viscount Banger level. We'll just let you on the show for free. If you're out there, you want to discuss Terror of the Vervoids, Bonnie Langford, you're also welcome to join us next time. And I guess we should invite Gabriel Wolfe as well as Sutekh.
There we go.
Give us the Sutekh perspective on his first Mel encounter. So, but you are definitely invited, whether or not any of those folks show up. So we will see you with the Valiard next time on Pull to Open
for a delicious vegetarian meal of podcast commentary
with lots of
See you later, folks. Okay, take it easy.